Okay, Mr. Mayor, it looks like we are live and ready when you are.
Okay. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's a regular meeting of the Seldovia City Council. Monday, February 13th, 2023, time is 6:01 p.m. We'll go ahead and do roll call. Swick.
Here.
Hayden.
Here.
Keithley.
Here.
Sweat.
Here.
Rojas.
Here.
And Kennedy. Here. Okay, we have everyone in attendance tonight. You'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God.
Okay, excused absences, we have none. Item D, agenda approval. We'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I move to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda by Keithley, second by Rojas. Any further discussion before we vote on the agenda approval? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of tonight's agenda. All those in favor, Swick.
Aye.
Peyton,
Aye.
Keithley,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 6-0. Agenda is approved. Item E, consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are approved with a single motion, no discussion, and one vote. The council member may request to remove any item for discussion and a separate vote. Items removed from the consent agenda will be placed under new business. Tonight's consent agenda consists of approval of minutes from the regular meeting, January 23rd, 2023. Those are found on page 5 of your packet. Item 2A is ordinance introduction. It's ordinance 23-13, a non-code ordinance to the city council of the city of Seldovia, Alaska, amending the fiscal year 2023 operating budget to provide for necessary mid-year adjustments by appropriating and transferring funds. Be found on page 8, and that's also recommended for public hearing on 2/27. Next item on the consent agenda is item 3A, resolutions, resolution 23-31, a resolution of the city council of the city of Seldovia, Alaska, authorizing the acceptance of the state of Alaska Department of Health and Social Services, Nutrition, Transportation, and Support Services grant for the city senior meals program in the amount of $26,460.94 for fiscal year 2023, and authorizing the city manager to execute the grant agreement. That's found on page 49 of your packet. And then the final item on tonight's consent agenda consists of item 4A. It's an action memorandum 23-03, city council statement of non-objection for the renewal of the Linwood Bar Beverage Dispensary liquor license number 656 and the Linwood Bar Package Store liquor license number 657. And that's found on page 50 of your packet. That is tonight's consent agenda. Does any item wish to remove any item to discuss separately tonight? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept tonight's consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept tonight's consent agenda by Peyton. We have second by Swick. Any further discussion on the consent agenda before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of tonight's consent agenda. All those in favor, Swick,
Aye.
Peyton,
Aye.
Keithley,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 6-0. Tonight's consent agenda is approved. That'll take us down to item F, mayoral proclamations. We have none tonight. Item G, public presentations prior notice. We have none. Item H, public presentations for items not on the agenda. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Laurel Hiltz, 279 Shoreline Drive. And just some catching us up on where things are and where we're going. So the Seldovia Chamber of Commerce met this last week and just taking a look at what's coming up for the summer and planning with that. And as part of that, understanding that for the community that we'll be having 2 fewer restaurants or food service businesses operating this summer based upon what we had in previous summers. And so no longer the Red Food Wagon, Casey Delights, and no longer the Boardwalk Pub and Grill. And so that's a significant impact in the community in regards to our ability to bring food services to our community members and certainly all our guests that are traveling in on a daily basis. So we're going to be of course, encouraging folks into the entrepreneurial spirit of how to go about supporting the local restaurants that are going to be open, and also brainstorming ideas and solutions to help, especially with those guests when you have 100 to 300 people roll in within an hour time frame, on a summer's day. So that's a big thing that we're looking at. We did have a few things that were reported from the school, and if by your leave, Heidi, if that's okay. So we have noticed that the school principal has not signed his contract for the next school year. So that being said, the school district will start a new search for an administrator, but we may find that the iteration or the way it looks is back to a regional administrator. So that is to be determined. Concurrently, the school district is looking at budget. So there is a budget workshop that's coming up here shortly. And trying to think if there was a third school thing, but I think those are the 2 driving on the school. So otherwise, from the chamber, we're working on getting out our new walking map. If you or any of your friends are business owners that were on the walking map previously because you were members of the chamber, but yet you have not signed up yet for this year's membership, we'd encourage you to get that done as soon as possible, because this year, if you are not joined in time, then you will not be on the walking map. Ooh, so little pain point there, but all in hopes of getting people signed up. So our chamber treasurer has been busy cracking the whip and getting it done. So, and now it's on to the marketing committee to put all our materials together and get things out. So good news is that Christy McLean of the McDonald's Spit of the Between Beaches Bed and Breakfast will be at one of the great sportsman shows coming up in Anchorage, and she'll be including Seldovia Chamber brochures there. And also, if anybody's heading north and wants to take some brochures with them, we do still have a good stock of 2022 brochures, and there's a few places around that they can always go and keep filling those empty shelves. So that being said, Seldovia Village Tribe is going to be launching community volleyball on Tuesday nights for teens and adults from 7 to 9 o'clock. So that's great news to add to what's going on at the school. And then, of course, our open gym and swim. And this Thursday and Friday is going to be, I believe, parent-teacher conferences. So that being said, we've got a few local groups that are doing activities for kids on Thursday and Friday. Seldovia Bible Chapel will hold a Joy Club party and lunch from 12 to 2 on Thursday. And then Seldovia Village Tribe will take up the activities up to the Sea Otter Community Center for the rest of the afternoon. And then on Friday, they'll be at the conference center for games and fun for the kids then. So flyers are out and pushing out and coming out and heading all directions here shortly. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Laurel. Appreciate all the information. Anyone else from the public wish to speak tonight?
I'm not seeing any more hands at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. Move on to item I, committee and advisory board reports. And I believe we have none tonight. Item J, administrative reports, none. Item K, public hearings, none. Item L, unfinished business, none. Item M1, New business, resolution 23-32, a resolution of the city council of the city of Seldovia awarding Kohl's Vending a 1-year lease at a monthly base rent of $350 for Harbor Kiosk A located on lot 6, block 10, waterfront resub number 1, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute the appropriate documents. This will be found on page 64 of your packet. And Heidi, go ahead and take it away.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As said, it's on 64 and page 64, and following it is the lease application itself. Mr. Cole had an opportunity to take a walkthrough of the area and submitted the application in order to be able to provide convenience vending machines containing snacks, beverages, and toiletries. He's asking for this to be a year-round lease. With the understanding that electricity is separate, so it'll be a $350 a month base rate plus electricity and sales tax. With no option to renew. So we'll discuss it again when it would come up.
Yeah, it'll just be 1 year, March to March. then.
Yep.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open it up to council for discussion.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for somebody. It's funny because I was just in Hawaii and on Molokai, where things shut down early, individuals have these vending machines out in front of their houses, 3 or 4 of them. And I thought that's an interesting idea. And then I come back and a month later and here somebody has the idea to do it here. I believe I'm in favor of it. I'd like to hear the discussion we're going to have on it. One thing I'm not sure is in the lease, or maybe you can clarify it for me, but the idea of trash and their responsibility, where is that noted? It talks about utilities, but it doesn't talk about trash. I would assume they're going to have quite a bit of trash with that they would be responsible for that, correct?
Correct. And it is in the draft lease. It would take me a minute to read it, but I do remember seeing
Oh.
it in there. And if not, I can make sure it is in there, but I do remember seeing that draft lease follows beginning on page 68.
Yeah, okay, maybe I just didn't see it. I looked through it, but I didn't see it. Okay, thank you.
Or I may have missed it. but-
Okay, anyone else?
Heidi, it says, I don't know if this applies, but number 12 says tenants shall be responsible for the ventilation and cleanliness of the premises. I guess that could include garbage.
Yeah, I'll make sure.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else?
Well, I'd like to, Mr. Mayor, just elaborate.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, I'm happy about it. Yeah, especially since he's agreed to sign a year's lease. Yeah, it's an interesting concept. I remember somebody talking about that when we first got those. And we'll see how it goes. Yeah. Be interesting to see. Is he gonna do like candies and he's not gonna do sandwiches and stuff, is he?
You know, I'm not sure. He specified convenient snacks and toiletries, and he talked about potentially doing something of that sort, but I'm not sure if he has it picked out exactly yet,
Interesting. Thanks.
or at least he hasn't shared it.
Okay, anyone else?
If I may.
Yep, go ahead.
I agree with the two that have spoke. I saw this and was excited because we've been needing a tenant in there, and also with the need of with the restaurants not being there, it doesn't replace restaurants, but it creates one more space that when we have that influx of people that they'll go to be able to get items that they need. I hadn't thought about the fact that it could be open all the time potentially, which is also really nice, whether it's people up early in the morning or later in the evening. It'll be interesting to see what is offered, because there's definitely items that could be like a vending coffee machine that was open at 5 or 6 in the morning. I know would definitely, there's usually random people kind of hovering around looking for coffee in the early AM. I think the only thing that I would add to it is the lease rate of $350. I think that's fair to start with, since that hasn't had a tenant yet. And when we were working with the other tenant on their lease, and trying just to get those people established in there, and then just rethinking that when the lease does end up, he wants to have a new lease, just like the other tenant having a higher rent, trying to actually recoup our costs for those would be great.
Great, thank you, Ashley. Anyone else?
I'm glad to see Mayor Campbell. I'm glad to see that we have an opportunity for the building anyway. The only thing I'd like to see is, I'd like to see a little more detail on line 12 before the fact, rather than learning it after the fact. So if we could get a little better description as to his business plan, I would think that would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you, John. Harmony?
I think it's great. I think having the flexibility of saying it's a convenient spot, maybe I'm just gonna throw it out there, some wet wipes, we don't have we don't have showers here. There's people maybe you want to take a little sink bath after camping or fishing. But maybe you can't get those in on the boat. I think this is great. I think the ambiguity of having a convenience store, as long as it exists within legal purview, is great. So sweet, let's get it rented.
Okay, sounds good. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I guess I have a question about the clearing of the snow, because it's going to be open year round, which is terrific. I don't know if Mr. Cole is going to be around to facilitate shoveling in front of his place. I don't know how close our boys can get to getting the snow cleared out of there, but it does now leave another area for the maintenance or the public works to take care of. So I guess I'd be wondering, just like council member John said that, he'd like to have a little bit more flushed out. And I guess I would be interested in seeing what his plan is as far as, is he planning on being around? I mean, these vending machines they don't need any attention except for to be filled and whatnot. So I'd be curious how often he's planning on being around and what his ideas, just to know what he has in mind, but I'm fully in support of it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. Yeah, I'll just chime in too. I'm also in support of this. Obviously, it's not the initial rate that we were looking for, but we got to start somewhere, and I'd rather get something going in there. Let him try it out, see if see if the market will bear it, and if it works for him, obviously, great. Of an opportunity, if it does work, if it works good, to renegotiate next year. So at least we'll both have both units full this summer, and starts to pay down the debt just a little slower than we had initially anticipated, but at least it's a step in the right direction. So yeah, and I think whatever he has in there, I know he's involved in a lot of stuff, so I'm sure he'll come up with something good. So yep, I'll be in support. Any other discussion before we go to the public?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just have one more question I just thought of. Heidi, do you know, is he planning on keeping it open at night?
I'm not sure, but I can take all these questions to him
Yeah,
and it
why
can be a
don't-
part of the lease
Because
negotiation.
I'm not sure if that's such a great idea, but yeah, we might want to ask him that too.
Sure.
Okay. All right, we'll go to the public. Anyone from the public wish to weigh in on resolution 23-32?
Not seeing any hands at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and bring it back to council for final action.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
I just want to provide one more comment. I think it was Bobby who mentioned trash. I would assume that the tenant knows that, if he's renting a property, it's his job, but it is public property, so we do need, so I don't see anywhere where it says that tenant is responsible for his trash or for his snow removal. But in the same way that anybody who owns and operates a building anywhere else, we just should have that as part of our agreement, what you're expected year round, where your snow is supposed to go, not supposed to be pushing into a parking lot, and if you're gonna be taking your trash to Layla's door, you need to have that like paid for or whatever that looks like. But yeah, anyways, other than that, I say, do we need to move on this? Or can we just say, you got it?
Keep it rolling. Yeah, and obviously he's asked those questions, and his questions and comments, how are the power phone and internet dealt with?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think we just expand a little bit on that. That'll be perfect to cover up the rest of the utilities with trash and snow removal. So
Yes, it was discussed and we'll just make sure to include that in the contract. It's all part of the negotiation process.
perfect. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 23-32.
Second it.
Okay, we have a motion from Rojas to approve resolution 23-32 with a second by Sweat. Any additional discussion before we vote? Okay, go ahead and vote on approval of resolution 23-32. All those in favor, Swick,
Aye.
Hayden,
Aye.
Keithley, Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 6-0. Okay, item M2, budget discussion, Seldovia Police Department options. Committee of the Whole, this will be on page 73 of the packet.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This kind of really hits off the budget discussion for FY 24. There is a budget schedule at the end or in the laydown that we can discuss more during the city manager's report. But as we went through the mid-year budget adjustment and in discussion with a few council members, Councilmember Kennedy and Councilmember Sweat, about moving forward with the hiring of a police officer, it was requested that we bring this discussion back to council just to go over options that are available. And of course, this isn't an exhaustive list, but it's just some initial ideas to discuss. I want to point out that there are currently 49 jobs listed on the Alaska Department of Public Safety website right now. And I have had a chance to speak with a fellow chief in another remote borough, and it's really hard. It's really hard to find somebody, especially without a dynamite package like they offer. All of medical for the entire family, housing, travel, just things that we don't necessarily have, but doesn't mean we can't work towards it. Just that it's competitive and it's not the most desirable field. Options listed on this memo were that the first one, that the city could defer hiring a police officer until a set time in order to further evaluate the needs of the community and essentially really see how it's going to work out for the community being involved in the VPSO project or VPSO program. There's pros and cons listed for each of these that I won't read out, but we certainly will discuss. Number 2, the hiring of a continued status quo, trying to hire a chief of police as posted. And we just have that listed on the website now as until filled. We did receive 4 applications. So far, we've received 4. Only 1 was complete. 1 was denied because they didn't meet the full qualifications. 1 withdrew and the other were waiting for more information. We did hold 1 interview, and that individual, we passed on hiring that individual. Option 3 is to no longer explore hiring a chief of police and request APIA hire a second VPSO for the community. I know I've heard from council and the public that this might not be where the community is at yet, but I just want to keep this on the forefront in case it does come up in the future years. And option 4 is in discussion, the potential that we could hire an individual for a shorter period than year round. In speaking with the other chief who was utilizing this model pretty regularly, he really didn't recommend it. He said he moved away from it because by the time you train somebody and get them in, you only end up with a few weeks of them. The cost is exorbitant unless you have somebody dedicated who's willing to come back year after year. You're doing it cycling through. But just to open that door, that there are options and we can keep sitting the way we are. hopefully have some more individuals apply and look at other options for advertising. But the budget is on page 77 without any changes. It's 144,743. It did go up a little bit with the budget adjustment, if that's approved, because of I don't remember which one it was. I believe it's because of the insurance and workman's comp. The workman's comp went up everywhere. And then there's some other information in the packet about the department history that lends to the beginning of the memo that talks about the fact that we've had we've hired 5 police chiefs since 2011, when Chief Anderson retired, and our retention rate for those 5 is 22 months. The job description is follows the way it's posted, and then a few examples of other departments, lateral or just seasonal employees. Oh, and I forgot, we did put the VPSO on starting page 84. So job description for chief of police, and then VPSO job description, just in case you wanted to see a comparison of what those jobs do. And I'll leave that up for council consideration.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. Okay, we'll go ahead and just open it up. And since it's a committee of the whole process, we'll just be kind of an open dialogue roundtable. Anyone from the public, we've got a small group online as well from the public, and then in here, so we can just randomly go back and forth between council, public, whoever wants to speak, just either raise your hand or ask to speak, and we'll go from there. All right, who wants to open it up? Go ahead, Bobby.
Mr. Mayor. Yeah, if you guys will bear with me, I have a little thing I have to read because otherwise I forget what I'm saying. First of all, I just want to say that I think some of us have been thinking about this VPSO versus police chief for quite some time. And then we kind of dropped it because we were not able to get a VPSO. Now things have changed. And it seems like the VPSO and the policeman's duties are basically the same. Granted, we need some clarification on a lot of things. I believe they certainly meet our needs. I think given our current financial situation, besides maybe looking for a change, we should give the VPSO model a chance and see if it would work for us. There have been many chiefs over the years since Andy retired, like Heidi already said, staying a year or two, and always it turns out Seldovia is not for them for whatever reason. It has cost us a lot of money to keep hiring these folks, as well as some grief. Again, I would urge you to look over the statistics for the last year that I've put together and have given you guys. It is basically, it's nothing more than I took a year of everything that he's done in his reports and kind of grouped them together so you guys could see, like, there, I think there's another one up there. Like, for instance, going to the school zone, you'll see it's X amount of times. And then it's not in any particular order, but it just shows you what all was done at any given time. So certainly this is not all of what I'm looking for. But it's a little bit of a start just to get you to thinking. Okay, where am I? Okay, I would urge you to look over the statistics for the last year and determine for yourselves if a chief is warranted. I suggest we have a workshop to iron out anything that might be a concern to some. And of course, there's going to be quite a few things. I can probably guess what some of those are. But I think it would be warranted to have the workshop so we can discuss all that and some more, get a little clarification on what exactly the VPSO can or does do versus the police chief, hash that out. So there's lots of things still to look at. Don't think what I gave you that's just a very, very small portion of what I would like you guys to consider. And then let the public weigh in and then make an informed, non-emotional decision on the matter. That's what I would like to see. I'm hoping we are not going to get into a huge discussion tonight because I'm pretty sure we'll be here till midnight. That's why I'm suggesting a workshop. Then we can all hash it out, cover everything in maybe 1 or 2 workshops before we decide, is it time for a change or not? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bobby.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian. Then Ashley.
Yeah,
will get-
thanks, Bobby, for putting together the statistics. I think the council really, when we always say, let's think out of the box, I think we do need to consider thinking out of the box. And I would agree, perhaps having a work session to see where everybody's at and have our questions answered. But I really have to say that thankfully we live in a community that pretty much patrols itself, except for a couple of abusers of the system. And we haven't had any terrible incidences like in the past. We're a pretty safe community. But when we look at our long-term budget goals, even with the $40,000 we get from the state troopers, the position at least costs us $100,000. And having the opportunity to have 2 VPSOs in our community is significant. And that is taking us out of the box. It is something that we'd have to get used to. But if you look at the duties, they really cross over. I'm amazed. And a lot of the duties that the VPSO has on their shoulders is more than what we expect of our patrolmen. So I would agree with Councilmember Sweat that we have a work session and see where everybody's at. And we keep on investing in our chief of police, but it doesn't get us very far for very long. And so again, I think it's a conversation that we need to have and hear from the public and see what everybody thinks and move forward. And I am concerned that, as was mentioned earlier, that we are going to be losing sales tax. Sales tax has been a wonderful contributor to our economy, but losing 2 businesses, that's going to be a hit. So we need to think about these things. And as Bobby said, get the emotions out of it and think about what's the best interest of the city. And thank goodness we do well as a community, taking care of each other in town, out of town also. But we do need to have some sort of official of some sort to help us, guide us through where we need it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Appreciate your comments. Ashley, go ahead.
Thank you. Bobby, thank you for bringing up all of your points. I am 100% on board with you that having a workshop is going to be important for this. I think that what would be really helpful for that workshop with public and us on the council is having something plain and simple in front of us that can really show what those holes are, since we know we have a VPSO 1 coming in. What are the holes that doesn't fill? What is missing without having that police chief? So then we're looking at it not as the position as a whole, but trying to think of it through that smart factor of what is it that we are going to be missing, what has to be filled, and that then we can weigh on, can we justify hiring a police chief, or there may be other ways to work as a community to fill those to help make the cost difference in our budget. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor Campbell,
Yes. sir.
I think I've been in support of having a chief here, and I like that. But I got to tell you, I've sat through several of the interview processes, and it's been pretty interesting to me, the different applicants that we get and the different cost factors associated with them. In other words, are they a lateral? Are they going to have to go through the whole academy, and are we going to have to pay for that? Are we going to have to pay for their moving expenses? Are they already in Alaska or not? And just so many things. And I got to tell you, it was really eye-opening for me as a new council member to hear the stats of the last half a dozen officers and how much the community has spent, and to see them only stay 22 months. So that being said, I'm definitely still in favor of having a chief here, but there's problems with that. How are they going to work together? Who's going to do what assignment? I was kind of interested in the thought of maybe a seasonal officer. There's some information here I'd like to read a little bit more. But maybe that's not the answer. I don't know what the answer is, but I certainly think it's good time served to maybe have a workshop and maybe discuss it with the community and see where we need to go. Maybe that isn't the answer. I don't know. But, it has been pretty quiet around here, except for a few, individuals that can't seem to stay out of trouble. But I will say that I'm open to at least hearing a discussion and seeing what's the best for all of us. And I hate to see us just go through this 22-month cycle again. If I would have thought that there would have been a lot more retirees like myself that are drawing their retirement that would have been willing to move to a community and make they got a few good years left in their career that could work, they could make a second income. But if you look at the police force across the nation, I mean, they're struggling everywhere, just like any other jobs. And so it'd be interesting to see if we've had a chance to review all this information and some more. It'd be interesting to see what everybody else has to say as well.
Thanks, John. Yep. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So if we hired one and then we hired another, we have this empty space. Are we allocating that towards the VPSO? Do we have?
Yes, that's part of the MOU is that they'll be able to utilize that space.
Okay. And then do we have, so if we're saving potentially, are we allocating the monies that we would otherwise be spending on a police chief towards the general budget? Like, do we have an idea how we're allocating?
So right now we're just at 44% of the budget and it's kind of at a standstill. There's not a lot of movement happening in that department. Potentially whatever money is being saved can then go towards training of a new officer. You're looking at anywhere from $3,000 to $14,000, depending on what kind of profession they're coming in from and where their training level is at. And then moving expenses, whatever other additional expenses are needed, living stipend, we've offered that for the past 2 officers, which is incorporated in the budget for the most part. But I would say to not count those eggs until they've hatched, because there are potentially.
I just feel like those are the obvious
it.
questions to ask, right? Well, if you're not hiring, then how are you, what are you doing with the saved? And then, so if we decided to, again, I would say that the workshop isn't obvious. I'm just going to ask the obvious questions out front. How will we go about hiring a police chief if we decide we don't want the second VPSO? Is it a 1-year contract with the VPSO that's renewed every year? What would our contract be with?
Through the mayor, if I
VPSO?
may.
Yep.
So my understanding, and I'll double check on this, but my understanding is we just have an MOU with the APIA so that they can bring an officer into this community, and that they were in the past willing to bring a second officer in. However, that has to happen on their budget cycle, and they have the same July 1, June 30th cycle. So if that was something that the city wanted to pursue in the future, you would have to give them enough notice that they could apply for that funding in that fiscal year budget.
I.e. meeting now.
Mayor,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
Mayor Kelly. Yeah, that's one thing, one point I'd like to make is there's no guarantee that we'd get the second DPSO. But we can certainly apply for one, but there's no guarantee.
Sure. So, again, I think it's makes sense to have a workshop dedicated specifically to this discussion. I think that going forward with the community, you need to have like a really good PR campaign, just like a lot of information defining those roles and how they differ. Specifically along that dialogue, a lot of, as was alluded to by Ms. Sweat, was that the emotional response to hearing the VPSO versus a police officer. And I think that when people understand, what the VPSO really is, it kind of, like, okay.
If I may throw that out there, Mr. Mayor, and having this discussion, having these options doesn't mean that anyone has to stick, except for the second VPSO one, I think is a little bit more, that's an annual basis, but really, as you guys have said, this isn't a decision that has to be made tonight. And in any one of these, there's room to change.
Well, I guess I personally am in favor of pursuing a second VPSO over hiring a police chief at this time. But it really, the public needs to be on board with that decision, and an informed public makes informed decisions. It won't hurt them. It's not going to hurt us to just really overstate what it would mean and what the actuality of a VPSO is versus a police officer. Because honestly, I think it's a good choice for a place like us. But anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah. I'm gonna have to say I disagree. I feel like I don't want to rely on trying to get a second VPSO, especially because it's so new, to jump right into just that. And it is we're in such a difficult position because it hasn't started yet. So we don't know. And not that, maybe these police officers, well, I'm guessing most of them that applied probably haven't dealt with a VPSO anyway. So it's going to be new regardless of if the VPSO is new here or not. Either way, we can't leave him by himself. It'll be the same situation. He's going to get burned out, and especially because he's required to do a lot wider range of duties. I'd like to see a police officer hired. I don't know if, you've had in there to wait and see how I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't know. To see how this VPSO pans out and I like how Ashley said, to know the difference of because it is very gray on what VPSO can do versus what a police officer can do. And to have that in black and white in front of us would be very helpful to see what we would be missing without an actual police officer. And it's very hard to I keep looking at the benefit package and how I kind of like the idea of, I get to have more of like a seasonal, but then you're going to run into how every year we got to hire somebody because they're not coming back. If there's a way to get creative with what the position looks like, since they'll be essentially like backup with the VPSO involved, if you could get someone who could be here most of the year, I don't know how you do that, because all these other departments that can offer way more than we can are still struggling to find people, and we are not that desirable. And I don't know if there's a way to, I don't know. And I'm trying to think like, what would an off season, be for, or I don't know. I don't know how that could look, but if we could, workshop to where we could try and get creative with how that position would look, it might be helpful. But then, I'm sure there's somebody out there who would take it somewhere. It's just, how long do we wait to find that person? Yeah.
Hadn't we in the past pursued doing like shift work with Homer, like exchange? And
It's
they were
all
just
money.
super against it.
Well, it's all money.
Mhm.
Homer was actually in support and their chief of police was in support, but they didn't have employees
Yeah.
who were willing.
Yeah, they were super against it. They're like,
Well, and then where are they supposed to live? I mean,
mhm, mhm.
that's a huge thing of they can't provide housing for, and they're going to be all looking for some place to live every 2 weeks, I don't know. Yeah.
So I'll just chime in. So, all right, listen to this whole thing. Well, we do have an answer here and it's right in front of us. So the VPSO program has been around since 1979, right? It's not new. The program was implemented as in a response to address rural public safety, right? We are the perfect community to be involved in a program like this, right? We are not a dangerous community. We're not a violent community. We're a little small bedroom community, 15 miles from Homer, where there are troopers. There's a trooper detachment in Anchor Point. Backup is close, technically, right? It's close. Not in the middle of the night, it's not. But this leads me into my next deal. I'm not interested. Let me back up. What I want to see when you start thinking about community-minded policing, right? We essentially now, we do that now. We haven't had a police officer in months now, and this isn't the first, since I've been here for 10 years. This is the third or fourth time now that, we've had months and months and months, or almost going on a year in one of those points where we didn't have a police officer. The world didn't come to an end. We didn't burn the town down. Everything was just fine. Was there an incident or two that we wish we would have had a police officer here? Absolutely there was. But again, nothing a VPSO probably couldn't handle in terms of a dangerous situation. Having two VPSOs would clearly be the answer to all the issues that have gotten us in this mess in the first place. People cannot come over here and work 24/7. Even if we hire a chief of police, they're not going to work 24/7. I argued about this before. We had past council members. Well, we're paying them. They don't get time off. Well, they're humans. And if you look and watch your little television set, you'll see that being a police officer in America right now, there is no worse job than being a police officer in America right now. There's none, not a single one. It's a terrible job right now. It's lose-lose. It's not a good profession right now. That's why you're not getting the cream of the crop that wants to come here and police. It's just there's other opportunities if they're going to remain in policing. Money is certainly part of the equation, right? I just think it makes perfectly good sense. You get more than a police officer in the fire and the EMS. That's a huge deal for us too, right? Those two departments, we consistently struggle to have enough first responders here. So we've got to look at that. We've got to take that into consideration. You get a second one, someone wants to go on vacation, probably you're going to be covered. The second guy here. I look at the $100,000 it cost us. If we were willing to take part of that to sweeten the pot a little bit in our negotiations with, DPS and the Village Public Safety Officer Program. I know Jared's going to have side-by-side as part of his vehicle. That's the plan for when he gets out of the academy and gets over here and goes to work here in May. Obviously, for going out the road, it'd be a little nicer to have access to the truck. We need to, give them access to our police department here with the jail, the office, all of that. I mean, I think we could come up with something, whether it was, a negotiated deal where, there was an additional living stipend if you needed that, or ideally you're going to look for someone that lives in the community, right? That's ultimately what we want. I want our police officers or our VPSOs to be our neighbors. I mean, I don't really want strangers, right? Because here's the bottom line. You don't know what you're getting when a perfect stranger comes in, right? And so I'm not in favor of a part-time police officer. You might get what you ask for there if a part-timer comes in here. Who knows what you're going to get? So, and once we go down that road, there's really no going back. So those are just my thoughts. So I'm definitely going to be in favor of option number 3 to explore that. Obviously, we need to hear the community out. There's probably a lot of people that might be completely against my thoughts, and that's fine. I think we need to hear it. But you can see from our trend, since Andy retired, it hasn't been good. We haven't been successful at that model. So, yep, go ahead.
That's
John.
exactly why I said to Heidi, we need to bring this to the council. It's because of just what's happened since Andy left. It just doesn't make good sense for us financially to keep the turnover just rolling. And that's all I see with the application process is more turnover. So the only reason I was in favor of a part-time officer is I thought, that might be interesting this summer to just see how the two work together, just on a short-term basis. I wasn't interested in a long-term thing. Just to answer the questions, well, who's going to take this call and who's going to take this call and how, to have an opportunity to see the dynamics of that. That's all. On a short term, then we could revisit it this fall. Are we going to chase the second VPSO? Are we going to hire a chief?
Yeah, and I think if it was someone, a police officer from somewhere else in Alaska, that was in a community to close proximity where there was a VPSO and or
Right.
Police officers that work together and understand the overlap of duties and how how they stay in their swim lanes and stuff.
Exactly. If we could have an officer from Homer work a few weeks over here this summer, maybe that'd answer the questions I have. But I don't know.
I just have one other. So do we know how many police officers the state is looking for? Do we know? I mean, if we advertise for a second VPSO and we only got 2 applicants for the one job we posted, are we going to run into the same problem? Are there shortages of VPSOs in the state? Do we know this?
I'm not sure on that. I do know that when they went through the interview process for the VPSO for the first position here, they had 2 applicants that they thought were really desirable, and they would have been happy to place either or. With the one individual, I think he's still waiting for placement.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's a risk. You're
right.
No, it's an absolute risk.
We can't fall back
But I
and say
think that risk
somebody
is
else's problem.
measurable to the same thing with, trying to recruit for a police officer or a police chief, right? So I think we're going to have that problem regardless. But it would be incredible to get a second VPSO, hopefully a young family that wants to come in and, live here and be part of the community and do all the things that we do, and be our neighbor. That's my thoughts.
Mr. Mayor, if I may have just one last word.
Yeah, go ahead, Vivian, you bet.
Yeah. I appreciate the conversation, and Mr. Mayor, I really appreciate your words that you came up with. I'm totally on board with the concept. I totally am on board with 2 VPSOs. We've gone through this over and over and over again, trying to figure out what's the right picture. And so I say that we need to do a workshop, because I think the public, I think everybody needs to know where the duties overlap. And when we just look at them, the duties of our police chief and the VPSOs, they pretty much flow back and forth pretty easily. But I also have some questions on their job duties and what it pertains to. So I think we need to have question and answer time in our workshop and make a decision if we're going to do 2 VPSOs and get the word out to Pribilof Association and let them know that we are interested. So I think we should have a workshop as soon as possible and come up with our questions and answers and get them answered. And then for the public, I think it's a great idea to come up with a document after we have our conversation, and saying, these are the differences, these are how they're similar. And so people can see in black and white. I've had people ask me, and I say, well, we've got on the website the duties of our police chief and the duties of the VPSO. And to me, they look pretty darn close, except for the VPSO expected to help out in our EMS department and our fire department, big pluses. So I'm just really excited that we need to have our work session and our workshop and get this going and move on to a new realm of what it should be for Seldovia. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Yeah, and it's, well, I'll just comment, just to follow up to that. I mean, it's a new model that we've never done here before, right? And like anything new, we're gonna be a little cautious, of trying to implement it and see what it's about. That's understood. That's to be understood. So there's gonna be concerns from everyone in the public on that. But again, this program's been around a long time, so I think if you get the right individuals in here, it can be super, super successful. Bobby?
Yeah, well, on a personal note, I love you, Jeremiah. I thought you were going to go in a whole different direction. So thank you for all your input, and I stand corrected. A couple things I want to say. Yeah, Jen, nothing is guaranteed with hiring a policeman. Nothing is even guaranteed with this VPSO or any VPSO we hire. We hope we get a batch of great people. The one thing I am concerned about, and I've been thinking about this, should we go the way of hiring a policeman? And obviously their duties are close, if not almost exact. So who decides who does what? Do we know that? And I think that's worth a discussion, because I'll tell you, I'm not in favor of paying one guy $140,000 while he answers a few calls. Not into that at all. So I think that might need to be, I don't know how we would clarify that, if that's the route we go. There's just a lot to think about, and I just one more word. I totally agree with Jeremiah. This program has been in the state for a long time. It's it's new for us, and like I say, nothing is guaranteed, but we hope it works out, with this VPSO that they hired. Thank you.
I have one more question.
Okay, go ahead, Jennifer.
So obviously there's so many ifs. So if we would like to ask for another VPSO, it all comes down to funding. And say we get the funding and we go through and try out a year or whatever with these two VPSOs. What happens if we don't like it and we want to try and get a police chief again? Besides us having to put that back in our budget, do we have to do anything with the state or anything to reestablish our police department, or what? Does we just decide we want a cop again and we just hire a cop? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Right, I believe so. From my understanding in Alaska statute and Alaska laws is that communities such as ourselves are not required to provide our own public safety. That is the responsibility of the state. Hence the reason why they have the Alaska State Troopers program, the VPSO programs. That's their duty. However, as a community, we can provide that for ourselves. That is an option. And so that's what we've chosen and what we've
So
been
it
doing.
would just be up to us putting it back in our budget and putting it back out there to hire somebody.
Correct.
And obviously, we would lose that
Right.
for that 40,000 or whatever it is.
And we may have.
Right. And probably the different bridge. Yeah. Okay.
So since we're flush with cash, we wouldn't necessarily have to, we could just take that money, leave it in the budget, put it into our police reserves, if you will. Let it sit there, not spend it on anything else, because we don't need it anywhere else. So.
What's that smirk on your face like that before, Mr. Campbell?
Okay, any other final comments on this? Anyone else from the public? Anybody? Any comments?
So definitely would appreciate data in front of us, would appreciate having the language that clearly specifies that it's not the obligation of a first-class city to provide policing for the community. I would encourage an abundance of caution as this type of decision is being made, with concern that statements tonight have indicated that the community is pretty good, absent a couple people, and that not much has happened in terms of things that might be illegal in nature or what have you. And knowing that women on a regular basis get beaten after the Super Bowl, or people have domestic violence relationship issues that take place. And if at this point in time, they don't feel that there's somebody they can call, that doesn't mean those things didn't occur. We might not know they occurred, but it doesn't mean it didn't occur. And if we have it in our spirit that life is easy enough here, I'm sorry, I saw way too many Brodies, and I saw a vehicle, knowing that a vehicle hit the bridge, and that by the grace of God, that man did not go into the slough. And that had there been active law enforcement that day, that would never have occurred. And that's just one of, multiple incidents with that one particular individual. And if that one individual is not worth us policing as best as we can, and it's okay and acceptable risk, I'm concerned about the choices that we've made in our community for how we lead our community. So to me, I'm greatly concerned with the direction that this conversation is headed. And I'm especially concerned that if we go down the path to lower our standard in regard for policing and law enforcement in this community, that we will not climb back up to the level that I believe we have established is a priority for us. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laurel. Okay, final opportunity. If there's any further comments on the budget discussion for the Seldovia Police Department options. Okay, what I did hear is that we would like to have a work session, sounds like with the community, at the first opportunity that we can get one on the schedule, Heidi. Probably sooner rather than later before we start getting piled up with budget stuff. Additional budget stuff, I should say. So if you can work on that, coordinating that, and then we'll get that on the books for everyone and get it noticed and get it out to the community. That would be great. Okay, item M3, Seldovia wastewater treatment facility, the 65% draft comment period, and that's found on page 96 of your packet. Heidi, I'll let you take that away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so this is the Seldovia wastewater treatment facility 65% draft, and it is open for public comment, council comment, staff comment. I did send it out to the staff to see if they had any comments and haven't heard anything back. I would just discuss that the one thing that I did notice in reviewing this draft is that the disposal of waste is still an issue. The recommendation in the report is that there would be a one-time permit to dispose of it. They would have to make the waste more of a solid through a special process, and then there would be a one-time special permit to dispose of it in a local landfill. Otherwise, then we would be hauling it to Homer. After the project, then the city would still need to pursue regular maintenance of pumping and disposing of waste throughout the year. And so that'll need to be a discussion whether that can be done locally or if it will need to be shipped to Homer through a ferry or barge. I did reach out and spoke briefly earlier this week with Don Castroveroff at Seldovia Native Association, and had a great conversation about how their pit out there is not set up for the large project that we have in mind at this time. And they are in discussion about what they're going to do with the site moving forward in the future, with regards to regular maintenance and pumping. So potentially that's something that we could keep discussing. Regardless, either way, we're going to have to figure out a disposal method. But other than that, the report seemed to cover all the basics that were discussed last time. And if it looks good and there's no comments for changes, then it'll go to the 95% draft. And then from there, hopefully to some funding opportunities.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. Okay, we'll go ahead and open it up to council for any comments, questions on the draft.
I guess I have one. Whatever the obvious plan A plan 1 recommendation. After we pump it the initial time and get all this, I mean, I understand that that's a big undertaking. And then they talk about after that, pumping it monthly. I mean, am I the only one that thinks that's unreasonable? I don't know how this works. I don't know if that's really, but it seems like that's a lot to ask of our public works and trying to deal with the ferry once a month, which obviously is not going to happen. Is that necessary? Is that so it fits in one truckload? I don't know. It seems like a lot to go from not pumping it for 30 years to pumping it once a month. I'm not any kind of expert at any of this, so maybe it is necessary. I don't know. It just seems like it's asking a lot.
Flows into the bay, right? I mean,
Or it
that's
sits there
sustainable.
and builds up. But
And
I
then
mean,
it
obviously
flows
we don't
into the
want to
bay.
let it build up for 30
Yeah.
years, but seems like maybe there's a more reasonable timeline for it to be actualized.
Like, is it a minus? It's a minus tide, right? It's a big tides. It's
I'm not
specific.
sure. I'd have to
It's
look into it.
specific timeframes. It's not every month, but it's at least where it gets that big exchange, and then you can see it from Google Maps, just it's a big brown sludge. So maybe just because we haven't done it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Just say on record.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, so this is a draft of 65%. It's a great draft, but I think we need to remember when we had this conversation, we all, I think, pretty much figured which would be the optimum choice for Seldovia, how we could handle it. And I think, Jen, the optimum, doing it once a month, that's in a perfect world. We're not in that perfect world. But I know even before we move forward with this, the big thing is that we need to take care of all the infiltration that's happening into the system before we can move forward. And I guess that was what I couldn't remember from our dialogue that we had in October, whenever it was. Where are we at? Have we got a target for when we're hoping to have all that done? I know Jordan mentioned a couple of things about the infiltration in certain areas, but where are we with that? What's our prognosis to eliminate all of those concerns that we can't even move forward with this project until we take care of those? And if Heidi or the mayor can answer that, if you guys can remember.
I'd be happy to, Vivian. This is something I think it's been in the last couple of city manager reports as a sort of a sideline that we are in the process of pursuing funding for a partial portion of the project. The project overall will be funded through VSW, and they're looking hopefully for that to be able to come available to the city this spring. But with that being said, we did a survey over the fall, winter of 30 residences on the slough to see if they were full-time or part-time. And I have been in a lot of discussion with VSW in the last couple of weeks. We have narrowed it back down to, instead of the full 30, it's just the 23 that they are recommending those connections be replaced. And out of those 23, there are 13 that are not full-time residents that the city would need additional funding in order for that project to move forward. That's phase one. So phase one is fix the service connections, and then there's 2 more phases. And I'm sorry, I don't have them off of the top of my head, but one is, like the main, and then there was another piece. And I go back and look at that cost estimate that they just renewed for us and let you know what the more specifics of it. But the reality is that's supposed to be coming down the pipeline, but there is a portion of the project that the city will have to pick up in order for even just phase one to be complete. And we've been in discussion with Denali Commission and potentially will apply with the state for a state revolving loan if needed in order to be able to grab that piece.
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, and I'm sorry, and I should throw out there, the reason why we're doing this right now is because the recommendation of VSW was for both projects to be done simultaneously. So that's where the funding would become available for both, and we would work towards both the project in the slough and the wastewater alternative treatment project at the same time, because you can't have one without the other.
Oh, they can be applied for at the same time?
Yeah, they'll be applied for at the same time.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi. Anyone else? I'll just chime in real quick. Yeah, I know that one of the items we talked about when the engineers were here was, out of all the alternatives, is to making sure that our O&M costs, whatever alternative was considered, that the O&M costs were one of our biggest concerns, right? I mean, we cannot build a piece of infrastructure that is going to bankrupt us or just put us in the dirt every month after month due to operational costs. So, I mean, yeah, I haven't got a chance to read through every bit of this here, but it's not, we know, Jennifer, based on your comment, I mean, the pumping, there's recommended pumping. We don't even have if we don't have the means of disposing anything locally, and we don't have ferry system year round, we're certainly not going to charter a landing craft, at 15,000 bucks a day to go, take over a couple loads of poo. So we gotta get this figured out. All right, anyone from the public wish to weigh in? Okay, well, it looks like we'll bring it back. Looks like the next thing in line then is it'll go to 95. They'll continue working to get this. We have, and the deadline is the 16th. So there's a couple more days. If you guys haven't got a chance, I'm going to go through this one more time. If you've got any additional items or concerns on here, get them emailed to Heidi so she can get those into them before they start working on the 95.
Mayor Campbell.
Yeah, you bet, John.
I just one comment. I think it's page 106, the population trends on that page to me are kind of alarming. And I guess what I'm getting at is you kind of hit it right on the head there, that we choose an option that we truly can't afford. And I just don't see the population trend according to this. It doesn't look like it's going to change much. So that doesn't put us in the position, in my opinion, to be able to support some huge state-of-the-art facility.
Yeah, those are all things we got to consider. So there's no money tree around the corner, that's for sure.
Mr.
But we
Mayor,
also know we got to get this fixed up. So,
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
yep, go ahead, Vivian.
just for clarification, when we had our meeting and we had it with the people who are putting this draft together, I think we kind of went through everything and everybody kind of figured out the only way we could actually afford to do this is get the sludge out, work with what we have, fix up what we have that's just cracked and whatever, and holding on to what we have and not building anything new. But we still have not made that decision. I thought we had. Am I remembering something wrong? that
Yeah,
we
I think
chose?
we were- Heidi, you can correct me, but I think, I mean, under the program or whatever here, I think they were, basically, it was their duty to prepare this, to tell us either way, as part of the PER, what the alternatives we have, and then for them to come up with, based on input, what the best alternative is. I mean, regardless if the option to do nothing is not an option, right? So given our limited, even given our limited financial resources, they're still going to have to give us a couple of options that will work. Even if we don't have a funding stream identified right now. So I think we're going to end up getting something out of this, even if we don't like it.
Does,
Then it's just a matter of, can we do it? What can we afford to do in reality? So, I mean, right now, as long as the EPA and the DEC aren't coming down on us, then that's one thing. But at some point, they're just going to close that door, right? And then we're not going to have an option. So, I mean, we're not the only ones in this boat. There's a lot of
Right.
communities in Alaska that are in the same boat we are. So, but I think, so this is not a new process by any means. Do you have anything else you want to add, or is that?
No, I think that covered it. I mean, that's what I remembered from their presentation, was that it was their duty and obligation to present multiple alternatives. And I believe from reading this that they do recommend alternative number one, but they needed to present more than just
Right.
one option. They needed to do this is like the full preliminary engineering report. That's what it is. So they have to look at all options surrounding the community.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. Anybody else closing comments?
has Public Works weighed in on this at all? Like, do they have any thoughts? I mean, did people doing it?
I did send this to them and I have not heard a response back yet. I think he was, Operator Cameron was involved in the last discussion and he's pretty well aware what this is happening with this project. Plus he was with them when they came down for a site visit. So I wanted to mention the sewage disposal issue because that is the only real comment I've heard from him throughout this whole process, is that there is definitely a concern from Public Works on how we are going to be able to continue disposing waste in the future, so that we don't end up in the same situation again.
Okay, unless there's any objection, then we'll probably just keep moving forward with the onto the 95. And again, there's 2 days left. So if anyone's got any additional comments that they want to send in, please do that. We can get them incorporated. And otherwise we can, what was the timeline for the 95? Do you recall, Heidi? Probably another month and a half, a couple months, I would imagine. So
Yeah.
it'll go a lot faster from 65 to 95, especially if there's not a ton of comments. So, okay. All right. You good with that then? Okay. All right. Last big one of the night, then item in city manager's report. And that's going to be in the laydown, I believe.
Yes. So. Just run through it pretty quick. It's same basic things we're going through here this quarter. This week is extremely busy at the city office as Jan goes through a remote audit. This is our first audit where the firm is actually not coming to the city. So it's a lot of paperwork being scanned and sent. That's happening as we speak, or was today. Raise grant is also due at the end of this month. So that's going to be my big focus for the rest of this week and beginning of next week in order to get that out. I've got a lot of really great data that came in from Mako. I'm waiting from some data from Smoky Bay Air, but I also have data from DOT. That was a lot of the feedback we received, is that from the last submittal is how to incorporate data or metrics of what it means to be able to transport via water versus air. So including that along with some statistics that Layla was able to get me from the harbor about just accidents and incidents, emergency response, things that happen out of the harbor, and statistics from our EMT service on how many times they utilize the harbor in Jackwap. So hopefully we'll be a little bit more. That was the big concern, is we didn't have enough data. So hoping that'll beef it up. New employees, we want to welcome aboard Jamie Williams as the new assistant / head cook. That position rotates for the city senior meals program, and Will Brunn as a temporary fill-in operator for Public Works Maintenance Department. It's temporary fill-in because he is not here all the time. He does operate a few different positions, but he has pretty good availability, especially during the winter, and wants to be of assistance when he is here. So he came on a couple weeks ago, and we have been hearing very positive things about both individuals in those positions. 2 interviews were held for the city clerk position, and we anticipate being able to offer the position to one of the candidates early this week. Vacant positions in the city still include chief of police, 1 senior meals, 2 refuse, custodian, and the public works seasonal temporary, but we're kind of in a good place right now. So we'll see. It's still posted, but we'll see how it goes with what we have. Harbor parking update. This is something that Council Member Rojas was aware of, that there were a few vehicles that were staying long-term in the harbor parking 30-day area. Harbor Master Jant Peterson was able to contact those vehicle owners, and they had made a plan that they were going to come over last Monday. They were going to send one of the 2 property owners to move all 3 vehicles. However, the weather has been difficult. So now they're going to look into getting a hold of somebody here locally and trying to get a local business to move the vehicles for them. But it's still in the works, and she's still in communication with them. Seldovia Salute Inflow and Infiltration Project, we just discussed that about there being 13 out of 23 that we're looking for funding. So we'll continue down that path. The CDBG CV closeout for MPV renovations is due March 31st. Before that happens, we need to have a community meeting just about how those renovations went for the grant. Heard an update from Vernon Miller today that the windows should be here Wednesday. And from there, they'll start removing them one at a time in order to not lose as much heat as possible for the building. And the heating system will be updated, or they'll begin that process next week. We did complete a grant application for the AARP Community Challenge Lake Susan Access Project. I really want to thank Rachel Friedlander for this. This is one of the last projects that she worked on besides the capital improvement program. She wrote a really nice narrative, because I know this was on her mind from the previous year, and kind of just really set up the pieces really nicely so that we were able to just go in and plug in those pieces to the grant application. And we should hear back mid-May on the status of that. Alaska Tsunami Preparedness Team will be presenting in Seldovia March 2nd on an updated Seldovia Tsunami Inundation Map. They wanted this meeting to happen in conjunction with city officials, tribal members, emergency response team, community members, whoever wants to be involved. So we are going to hold it in conjunction with Seldovia Village Tribe, or I should say Seldovia Village Tribe is going to hold it at their space, the Seldovia Conference Center, where the team will answer questions about the map, as well as any other questions related to tsunami preparedness. Additionally, they want to work with the city to create a community-specific tsunami brochure, and they will print those really nice in color. They want, bright, colorful, something people pay attention to, that we can have. Her goal was at one in every home, and be able to have it for businesses, people to hand out with as much or little information as we want for the community. So some people can grab. Draft FY24 budget work session schedule is in the packet on the following page 5. You'll see there's a tentative work session or topic for every council meeting through April. And so just with that in mind, we'll have to look at everybody's schedule availability and try to put in a police work session, as well as a MPB renovations work session. We'll be getting a hold of everybody to see what your availability is. But if there are any specific dates that really don't work, especially if there's a topic that you're really interested in and it's just a day that's not going to happen, please let us know so we can try to shift things around for the most availability of everybody. Seldovia Permanent Fund annual investment amount. At the last council meeting, Councilmember Swick inquired about what the city's committed annual investment amount was for the Seldovia Permanent Fund. The FY23 budget states that $500 from the revenue the city receives from route sellers sales tax will be the permanent revenue stream into the Seldovia Permanent Fund in FY23. And along with some more information about that permanent fund, I reached out to APCM to see when they would want to hold an annual review for to discuss the upcoming targets and where we are at with our investment. And they recommended April or later because they will receive new forward-looking market assumptions at the beginning of the second quarter. So that's a part of the budget schedule for the end of April. And quick note, continued projects, small education RFP closes February 17th. Laurel didn't mention it, but it's exciting that 4th of July theme is hooked on Chinook. So that's exciting. A final draft of the dam maintenance and operation manual was submitted to the state. Thanks to Radzi. I'm gonna give him a hand pat. It looks really good. We'll have to hear back from them what they say. And we sent out a letter of support to ARWA. Oh, and last note, Prince William Sound RCAC sent a notification of expiring term. And Dr. Zink did submit a letter of interest to continue his service on that board. So if council has no objections, if you do, let me know. But as long as there's no objection, we'll present an action memorandum at the next meeting in order for the city council to reappoint Dr. Zink. And that's it.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. Any questions for the city manager? Okay. Item O, informational items not requiring action. City office will be closed Monday, February 20th in observance of President's Day. Item P, executive session none. Item Q, council and mayor comments concerning items not on the agenda. Swick,
No comment.
Peyton,
No comment?
Keithley,
No comment.
Sweat.
Yeah, thank you guys for all the information we got tonight. And I forgot what else I was gonna say. Anyway, thanks.
Okay, Rojas,
Yeah, a big thank you to the staff for putting together a great packet and information for us to work off of. Thanks, and thanks to the council for your hard work. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
thank you, Vivian. Kennedy.
And further this evening. Thank you.
Okay, Don. All right, thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone in the public for attending and the staff for putting everything together tonight. Next regular meeting will be held on February 27th, 2023 at 6 p.m. And I'll go ahead and look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second that.
any objection?
Mhm.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, good night, everyone.